So throughout this Lent season, a few of us have been reading a book called The Last Week. And in that book, the authors offer a lot of history in detail, just about sort of all of the complexity that is behind Jesus's last week. And if we had all day, we could get into it. If you want to know more, ask, because it's really, really interesting. I've learned a lot in this book. But one of the things we talked about very early in our sessions, it breaks up the last week of Jesus' life by day. So it's 8 chapters for the 8 days of Jesus' final week. One of the things we talked about was Palm Sunday. So it was the first chapter we read was Palm Sunday. So there's a few of us sitting in this room who are probably like, I'm not so sure about this service. So Palm Sunday is an interesting day, right? Because in our prayer book, Palm Sunday starts with this lovely procession with all glory, laud, and honor, and this Bibles call it the Triumphal Entry into Jerusalem, and Jesus is like the hero of the day, and there's this big parade, and the colt is found exactly as Jesus says, and they throw some cloaks on the colt, and he rides down the Mount of Olives, which is across the valley from Jerusalem. He rides into the city, and he's the person who everyone wants to see. He's the person everyone wants to meet. And then, if you follow our prayer book service, which I've adapted a little bit for today, within 10-15 minutes, all of a sudden, we're reading the Passion. So if you've done that service that way in the past, you know it sort of feels like whiplash. It's just very, like, sort of alarming, like how quickly things change. And I guess you could argue that things do change quite quickly during Holy Week as well. But one of the things I do want to point out for you this morning that the people in the book group will also appreciate is this idea of the crowd, right? We have this crowd on Palm Sunday, and we hear in the gospel according to Luke that they're shouting Hosanna and blessed is he who comes in the highest heaven. And these people love Jesus, right? They've been following him for 3 years from Galilee to Jerusalem and back. In a little bit, we'll hear about the women who follow him throughout his whole life or his whole ministry. So we have this group of people who adore this Jesus, right? They are following him for a lot of reasons. One of them being that they have deemed him their king, right? Not this Roman emperor person, right? Jesus is their king who has come to be their Messiah, to sort of save them from all of this messed up first century Judea domination and political world that they live in, right? So that's the crowd that we are a part of on Palm Sunday. Those are the people who are following him and throwing their cloaks on the road. And if you notice, Luke says nothing about palms. So in first century Jerusalem, palms were a symbol of political uprising, a political symbol. So instead of having palms, Luke has cloaks, which are a symbol of kingship. So here's Jesus again, sort of pushing back against everything else that's going on around him. So at the same time Jesus is entering Jerusalem, Pilate is also entering Jerusalem from the other side of the city. So Jerusalem, a walled city with gates all over the place. So Jesus is entering on one side as a king, but also as this person who loves everybody and who has eaten with people he shouldn't eat with and healed people he really shouldn't have healed, and all of those things, all of the reasons that he will, by the end of the week, be sort of wanted person number one, right? So he's entering the city. Pilate's also entering the city under a very different sort of agenda, right? So Pilate is entering as the emperor, as this Roman leader who has been sent to Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem is part of the Roman Empire at this point, to be the lawgiver, the authority figure in Jerusalem. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of complication sort of to this story. So we have all of that sort of wrapped up into this procession that we have just sort of welcomed Jesus into Jerusalem with. So we have this first century Judea that is really sort of, it's a domination system. You've got the people at the top who have all of the wealth. The people who are doing all the farming, they don't have a whole lot of money. So they're the ones who are doing all the work, but the money, not surprisingly, doesn't stay with them. It goes back up to the people at the top, and then eventually gets sent back to Rome. Doesn't even really stay in Jerusalem. And then we have Jesus, who comes and says, eat with everybody, welcome the stranger, love those you come across. And he wants to lead with love. He wants to lead with humility and lead with grace, which is very different than the people who, than the way that Pilate and Herod want to lead. So the question for us then is this: what procession are we in? Are we in this procession following Jesus? Following Jesus, as we know, eventually, by the end of the week, all the way to the cross? Or are we in this procession that is sort of just doing what's the easy thing, following what the, wider general authorities would wish? So Jesus is pushing back against that, invites us, I think, to push back against that as well. And just sort of to remember all of the people who Jesus has welcomed and served and healed and everything that he's done over the last 3 years of ministry. That's who Jesus is inviting us to be as well. So I sort of left you hanging with that idea of the crowd. So to get back there, we've got this crowd, right? These are the people following Jesus into Jerusalem. Now, how many of you, when we get to the Passion in a few minutes, when we get to the part that says crucify, how many of you does that make you cringe a little bit? Ever make you feel like, oh my gosh, I do not want to say this? Okay, so I'm going to sort of ease your fears or ease whatever anxieties you have about this. As I learned in this book, this crowd on Palm Sunday is not the same crowd on Good Friday. They're different people. And if you think about sort of how Good Friday happens, it makes a lot of sense. And we won't get into it too much, but when we get to that part in the Passion, pay attention to where Jesus is. Okay, he is in he's in Pilate's palace, actually, and Herod is there. So Herod is the governor of Galilee. Because Jesus is a Galilean, Pilate sends him off to Herod and says, you take care of him. Herod sends him back to Pilate. But they're inside Pilate's palace, right? They're inside sort of this inner circle of the Roman authorities, the Roman Empire. So the people who are there on Good Friday morning, when Jesus is condemned, are not the same people who were there on Palm Sunday. Because the people who were there on Palm Sunday would never have been allowed inside the palace. They weren't special enough. They weren't part of that upper echelon, the leadership group. So I hope in whatever way that makes you feel a little better about that part of the Passion, it cleared up a lot of confusions for me as I was reading it in that book. So this day, this Palm Sunday, ushers us into Holy Week, which as Christians, we could argue is probably the holiest week of our lives as followers of Jesus. So, and I think in a lot of ways it mirrors what we experience in life. We know Jesus was very fully human in addition to also being the Son of God. But all of the experiences Jesus has during Holy Week, he experiences as a human being. So he allows himself to sort of become the symbol of this Roman rule, right? Like he's pushing back against that, but that is why he he dies, because he's the one who sort of said, like, this isn't okay. So we have this triumphal entry, this celebratory moment. And perhaps in your life, you can think of a time when it just feels like things are going the way they should. And we probably could argue that it's not going exactly the way it should, but it's going the way Jesus wants it to go on Palm Sunday. It's going the way that he says is going to happen. And he does have this. He is sort of the king, the focus point of this parade. And then as you move through Holy Week, when we get to Wednesday, sometimes Wednesday is called Traitor Wednesday. It's kind of the day that we mark as the day when Judas betrays Jesus to the authorities. So that leads us then into Thursday, which we will mark together for Maundy Thursday with foot washing and talking about service and Jesus's Last Supper with his disciples. So cherished time with loved ones, meals with loved ones, kind of moments, I think, where we sort of wish they wouldn't end, right? If we could live sort of in that, the beauty of a meal with people whom we love, then we've probably been there, right? But we know that doesn't stay that way. Jesus then moves into the Garden of Gethsemane and all of the emotion and the fear and the being betrayed and denied by his friends over Thursday night into Friday morning. And so just sort of the despair and the wondering, like, how is this going to work out? Like, is there going to be good that comes from this? And we know there is, but in those Good Friday moments, it's hard to find them. So if you've experienced a Good Friday moment and you've been like, there's something wrong with me, I promise you there's nothing wrong with you. That is how Good Friday moments are. And you wonder, like, the world literally feels like it's coming to an end and you don't know what to do, right? You don't know if you're going to make it through. And then we sit with that. So Jesus dies at noon on Friday, and we sit with that for the whole rest of Friday, all of Saturday, which in the Jewish tradition was the Sabbath. They couldn't do anything. So that deep grief and silence of Holy Saturday, that is something we also fully experience in our own lives. Those times when we have more questions than answers, more hurt than healing, all of that is wrapped up into this Holy Week. But we do know that resurrection comes, right? So this time next week, we'll be sitting here with the A word that we can't say right now, and all of the excitement of Easter Sunday and the 40 days of Lent and having walked that journey in whatever way you've done that this year, having had that experience and now getting to this joyous Easter day. So if that sounds like a lot, it is a lot. Holy Week's a complicated, complex, emotion-filled week for us. And as I mentioned in the Zion Connection, if you've never experienced Holy Week in church, in community, by marking every day that we have a service, I invite you to try that this year, because it is a really powerful experience to be able to say that you were in church from Palm Sunday to Maundy Thursday to Good Friday to Easter Sunday. It makes it a whole lot more meaningful to get to Easter than to just sort of skip from today to next Sunday. So if you have the time and have the ability, I welcome you to journey that together with us this year, because it is a really powerful experience. And to ask those questions, to have those curiosities, maybe because of whatever's going on in the world, all of the things that are going on in the world around us, all of the things that we've been dealing with for the last 2+ years, maybe you have a lot of questions and you're just sort of wondering, like, what does Holy Week mean? Or, how can I live this differently? Or, there's wonder and grief and emotions galore. And like, what do I do with all of that? Sit with that, because that's important. That's part of what this week is about. So this is your invitation. Join us this week. Join Jesus this week. look forward to that Easter joy, but let's not get there too soon, because I think there's a reason we mark each day the way we do, and it becomes sort of the touchstones of our faith life, and that's the journey we get to walk together. Amen.